Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends. Welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch, where we are now a week removed from Protour Rivals of Ixalan, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of upheaval in the marketplace. Modern cards really hot right now. A lot of people saw the Pro Tour and tried to pick up some new decks, maybe some new tech. A lot of those cards are spiking. Also, there's a lot of other stuff going on. Pauper got hot again this week. We'll be talking about that. Standard is actually still forming the new meta, so there's some action in there too. A lot of stuff going on. And look at that guy in the background peeking behind Hollow One, looking at us. He's up to something. We're going to talk about him too. So, all right, let's get into it. Quickly before we get started, just a really fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to help support us. You'll find our Patreon page down there. You'll find some links to products on Amazon. Once you go through that first Amazon link, whatever you buy, we'll get a small percentage. And then finally, Flipside Gaming still giving a promo code. Hopefully you can save some cash and also help us at the same time. With that being said, let's get into the cards. And we're going to begin, as we always do, with Standard. Top 5 cards that have lost a value this week. Just a quick reminder, you won't see Rivals of Ixalan cards here today when we talk about Standard. We did a companion video on those yesterday. I'll link it at the end of this one, but you'll see everything else today. Before we get to our top 5 proper, I just want to point out Rampaging Frostodon. Of course, this was hit with a banning a few weeks ago, still declining as expected, down another 25 cents this week to $2. Number 5, Glorybringer, down 18 cents to $4. Glorybringer is actually seeing a fair amount of play right now in the format. It's just not in high quantities. Like, you'll find this in a lot of different decks coming out of the sideboard as like a 1 of, sometimes a 2 of, and every once in a while, maybe like Grixis Energy or something like that, you will find these main decks. But for the most part, it is still seeing play, maybe not to the level of play that a lot of people were expecting. So it does tick down just a little bit this week to a very reasonable $4, actually. Number 4, Angel of Invention, down 18 cents to $6.90. This is a key part of the gift decks, which are still kicking around and can still put up a good result here and there. But they are being overshadowed right now. I mean, the hot decks currently in the format are things like the various aggro builds, your Grixis Energy, your Grixis or Dimir Control decks. Control actually looks pretty good right now. There's a number of really strong decks out there kind of vying for the position of being the best 2 or 3 in this meta, and I think that will shape up more and more as the next few weeks go on. But for fans of the gift deck, you might be able to pick this up a little bit cheaper within the coming weeks. Number 3, Nissa, Steward of Elements, down 36 cents to $8.56. This is a card that's seeing a little bit less play now in this current meta compared to the last couple, so no surprise this is ticking down a little bit. You will see these occasionally in some of the Merfolk builds, but not all the Merfolk builds are going down this road, and also Merfolk builds in general seem to be having a hard time right now. It's not that they're doing poorly. Like, I've seen a lot of Merfolk builds come in like number 9, come in the teens and such in some big tournaments, but they haven't really been able to grab hold of the spotlight in like a top 8 of a major tournament. And because of that, some people are starting to sour on them, and they're going into some other directions when it comes to their deck building. So keep an eye on these Merfolk. I do think you'll see a little bit of softness in them unless they can put up a big result soon. Speaking of Merfolk, number 2, Metallic Mimic, down 38 cents to $9.49. Another card that you'll find in these Merfolk decks, and is a little bit softer this week. Number 1, As Foretold, down 59 cents to $10.06. As Foretold has been hot due to its play in Modern, not necessarily Standard, of course. Now, this had a kind of interesting trajectory. I mean, first off, this was a card that got very hot a couple months ago as people started to get interested in this As Foretold Living End deck. A lot of streamers were playing it, articles were being written about it, people were assembling the deck, they were excited about it. And then it didn't put up a good result for a while. So people started to lose interest, cards started going back down. A week ago, it came in second place in Star City Games Classic, but it was a variant version of the As Foretold Living End deck, a little bit different than what we were seeing. So it did provide a spark of hope for people that were interested in that particular deck. Now, the Pro Tour happened last week, and this deck wasn't really around doing much. I'm sure there were some people playing it, but they didn't put up any huge results. They didn't get any camera time or anything. So kind of is what it is. Because of that, people have moved on to a lot of other things, and As Foretold gets a little bit softer this week. The big test for this card is the coming weeks. Will more of these new variant versions of As Foretold Living End do well in some of the other tournaments, like Classics and such? We'll have to wait and see, and if that's the case, the card could bounce back again in a week or two. Alright, let's move on to the cards that have gained value in Standard this week. Coming in at number 5, Carnage Tyrant, up 79 cents to $16.95. maybe no surprise. I mean, this is a card that had a huge price point and a huge expectation coming out of Ixalan. Unfortunately, the Dinosaur deck didn't do a whole lot coming out of that format. This standard, it's been doing a little bit better. Now, unfortunately, I will say the Dinosaur Monsters decks aren't doing quite as well now as we get a few weeks into the format. A lot of people are gravitating towards some of the other decks I mentioned earlier, but they're still kicking around. They can still put up a good result, and you'll find this sometimes, even if it is out of the board, of some of the Dinosaur as well as Monster builds. Number 4, Heshep Oasis, up 87 cents to $1.49. This has become quite a solid utility card in the standard format. Basically, if you're playing green and creatures, you're probably interested in running some of these. You'll find this sometimes in Merfolk decks, Dinosaur decks, Monsters decks, Constrictor decks, and the such. Number 3, Hezeret the Fervent, up $1.02 to $18.99. So I mentioned this last week, but Hezeret's had a few really good weeks. Card has just looked amazing, and not only standard, but also pretty good in modern too. When it comes to standard, though, all those aggro decks you've been seeing, Mono Red, Boros, Rakdos, they're running this. And other decks as well are throwing a Hezeret in here and there. So what about modern? Even in modern, sometimes the Jund decks, the Mardu Pyromancer decks will sometimes run like one of these too. The awkward part of that, though, is the deck that did the best in the Pro Tour, the Mardu Pyromancer deck that came in second, that Jerry Thompson was running, actually wasn't running any of these. But I have seen builds with this particular card in it as well. So, yeah, it's got a little bit of a foothold in modern, but really doing awesome work right now in standard. Number 2, Hollow One, up $1.58 to $2.73. Now, I talked a little bit about this deck on Monday when we did our modern recap after the Pro Tour, but this is an interesting deck because going into the Pro Tour, there was a lot of people that were trying to assemble the deck. There was a lot of buzz around it. At the Pro Tour, not a lot of players were running it, but the players that were running it did very well with it. All of them making day 2, and one of them did make the top 8 as well. And that brought the attention necessary for some of the other cards in the deck to get hot. I mean, we've been looking at a lot of cards for a few weeks now, but Hollow One was not one of them until recently. Finally, the demand has caught up with the supply for this one and has a nice little increase this week. So, again, this is a deck to watch. If it can continue to put up some good results in the coming weeks, this card could get hotter. Number 1, Vraska's Contempt, up $2.56 to $11.98. This is the third week in a row I think this has been number 1 on our list. This card has been amazing in standard, and it was amazing in the last meta too, but the big difference between this meta and the previous meta is there's no more abundance of Teamer Energy. I mean, Teamer Energy was such a huge deck. There were so many players on that deck that they didn't need to pick up Vraska's Contempts. So they just didn't, and they waited. And now that people are moving on to other decks, and black is a very powerful color. I mean, Grixis Energy, Grixis Control, Dimir Control, Rakdos, Aggro, among so many other decks right now, that this card has become increasingly hot recently. So fantastic staple for standard. That's not going to change either as we move through different metas. But right now, people are scrambling almost to get their copies. All right, let's move on to the world of modern. And again, we saw a lot going on here thanks to the Pro Tour last weekend. But let's see what lost value. Number 5, Scalding Tarn from Modern Masters 2017, down $1.64 to $69.22. This card, as well as the Zendikar version, have been trending up quite a bit recently. We've been following the Zendikar version over the past few weeks. Finally, we get a little bit of a snapback here, at least in regards to the Modern Masters 2017 version. Number 4, Horizon Canopy from Future Sight, down $1.98 to $53.98. So we talked about this one quite a bit in some other videos, but the reason this is trending down, even though it sees tons of play, Legacy, Modern, it's even in the Humans deck, which is very popular. We saw a couple of those in the top 8 last weekend. But having said all of that, yeah, the card's still going down because it was reprinted in Iconic Masters as a rare. So there's a lot of copies. There's a much cheaper alternative version of the card you can pick up if you need it to play with. Now, with Horizon Canopy's original version, it's got a unique card border, it's got unique art. There's always going to be a draw to this card. So I do think it goes down a little bit more because, again, Iconic Masters versions are everywhere right now. I don't think it goes much below maybe the $45 mark before it stabilizes because there is a contingency of players that will gravitate towards this original version. Number 3, Tarmogoyf from Modern Masters, down $2.12 to $71.77. We're going to talk more about Goyf in a little bit, but I do want to point out right now this is one of the more expensive versions, not counting the Future Sight version at this point, so it does tick down a little bit this week. Number 2, Phyrexian Obliterator, down $2.29 to $33.25. So this card is going down because it was announced at the Pro Tour last weekend that this will be a part of Masters 25 as a Mythic with the same art. They did show the card, actually. So We know that's coming, and this isn't a card that sees Modern play, at least not anymore. It used to be part of a Fringe deck like a couple of years ago, like a Mono Black Devotion Fringe deck, but you don't really see much of that anymore. But it is an awesome casual card. A lot of cube players will like this card because Mono Black Devotion is an easy thing to inject into cubes and is relatively affordable. This is one of the more expensive cards you'd have to pick up for that. So casual players are attracted to this card. That's why it had a nice price tag for as long as it did. But with more copies coming into the marketplace now, I would expect this to go down a little bit lower, even if it is going to be a mythic in the set. Number 1, Azusa, Lost But Seeking. Down 321 to 4309. This is a card that does see Modern play. You'll find it in Nightfall, Collected Company style Bant decks. You're also going to find this sometimes in like Amulet Combo. But it's going down this week because, again, last weekend we found out this was going to be in Masters 25 as a rare. And furthermore, they're giving us the Judge promo art, which is actually pretty sweet looking. So I do expect this to continue to drop in the coming weeks as well. Alright, so those were going down in value, but you can imagine after a very popular Pro Tour last weekend, we're going to have some cards going up in value. So let's look at those. We're going to start off, though, with an honorable mention before we get to our top 5. This is Phantasmal Image from Modern Masters 2017, up 240 to 793. This would have been number 6 on our list, and I thought it was still important to mention because it had such a high percentage increase. And of course, this looked great on camera last weekend in those Humans decks. A couple of them were in the top 8, and this card was a big piece of that. Sometimes you'll find this in Merfolk decks as well, but really it's Humans that are driving it this week. Number 5, Mox Opal, up 283 to 7124 this week from Modern Masters 2015. Maybe no surprise that this card is tracking up a little bit this week, considering this is a key part of Lantern Control, which of course won the Pro Tour. Now, the thing about Lantern Control decks, though, I do think it is probably the best deck in Modern. I'm not just saying that because I won the Pro Tour. I just think that's true. The problem is it's a very difficult deck to pilot. I think you have to be all in on playing a lot of Lantern Control if you're going to commit to that deck, which makes it a deck that's very good but doesn't always put up the huge results you would expect from it. So with that being said, this is a very popular card this week, and it's also a key part of Affinity, which is another fan favorite deck. Number 4, Tarmogoyf from Future Sight, up 285 to 94.82. Nice little jump for this card this week. Now, in the previous months, all the Tarmogoyfs have been looking pretty soft, so why is this one going up this week? Well, it was really the Pro Tour. It got some great exposure this past weekend. Now, the thing with Goyfs is, over the last number of months, we've been seeing them go down and down and down, due to the fact they've been seeing less play percentage-wise in Legacy and Modern, thanks to cards like Fatal Push coming into the format. But the Pro Tour did remind us of something this past weekend. Even though Goyf might not be as good as he used to be, it's still really, really good. We saw this in a couple of the top 8 decks, like Abzan, as well as Traverse Death Shadow, and it was all over the place all weekend in coverage. So Tarmogoyf, still a good card in this original version with the unique card frame and the original art, also the one that's the hardest to find in good condition, has a good week. Number 3, Goblin Lore. We've been tracking these for a number of weeks now. This week we're looking at the Portal Second Age version up $504 to $17. The other two were still going up a little bit, but they were stabilizing. This one's kind of catching up with those right now. But of course, this is a key part of that Hollow One deck. Number 2, Black Cleave Cliffs, up $629 to $31.99. So this card had a great week, really exploded. Why is that? Well, it's a key part of a lot of mana bases in Modern and even some other formats too. But really what grabbed the attention on this card this past week, of course, is the play at the Pro Tour in the Mardu Pyromancer deck, as well as the Hollow One deck in particular. This is a card that shows up in a lot of other popular decks too, like a lot of times Dredge, for example, in Modern. But it was really the coverage this weekend that got people thinking about this as they scrambled to try to put together some of the decks that they saw. Number 1, Collective Brutality, up $8.12 to $22.75. Wow. This was the coming out party for this card this past weekend at the Pro Tour. And this is a card that I've been really high on ever since it got printed. If you've watched the channel for a while, you're probably sick of hearing me say it. I was begging people to get their play sets for the last couple of years now, it feels like. And yeah, it's really, really spiking pretty hard right now. I would expect some snapback, don't get me wrong, of course, because this is a pretty aggressive spike. But the card is just amazing all over the place in Modern. It's been a Modern staple for a while, but it really took a Pro Tour to just kind of grab everybody's attention, and that certainly happened this weekend. All right, let's move on to the world of Legacy, and as usual, you can expect some crazy buyouts and some other weird things going on. So let's check it out. Number 5 out of the cards of lost value, Serendib Jin. This is down $19.99 to $109.99. This was the target of a buyout a little while back, had some big spikes, it came back down. I think it's just trying to find its price point now. Number 4, Tropical Island. This is the unlimited version, down $24.26 to $336.53. Number 3, Old Man of the Sea from Arabian Nights, down $56.98 to $190 this week. This was a card that was the target of a buyout, so perhaps this is the beginning of those copies being re-entered into the marketplace. Number 2, Gauntlet of Might from Unlimited, down $62.65 to $387.73. This card has been very hot recently, so it has been due for a little bit of a snapback. That's what we're seeing this week. And number 1, Diamond Valley, down $89.74 to $293.24. Another card that's been hot again recently, getting a little bit of a snapback this week. All right, let's move on to the top 5 legacy cards that have gained value this week. And coming in number 5 is Mistress Factory, the winter variant from Antiquities, up $32.61 to $175. This card had an interesting history. Last December, we saw this card start to go up in value a little bit because the announcement came that, of course, the silver bordered cards were going to be legal temporarily in Commander. A lot of people wanted to build these winter holiday themed decks, so they went out and bought some of the silver bordered holiday cards. They bought things like this, Goblin Snowman. All those cards are going up a little bit. And then I think somebody noticed and it felt like a real true buyout of this card. And this card just spiked really aggressively. Since then it went back down, but now because the price probably went back down to something that was more affordable again, we started seeing some more action on the marketplace. It starts to go up. It's probably trying to find its new price point now. Number 4, Taiga from Unlimited, up $34.52 to $252.97. Another card that would fit really well in a winter-themed deck. Number 3, Psionic Entity from Legends, up $38.23 this week to $39.95. Okay, there's a number of cards this week from Legends that actually were not on the reserve list. They've been reprinted, and they've spiked really hard. It definitely reeks of a buyout. It's an interesting buyout to target cards that are not on the reserve list and that have been reprinted, and you can find cheaper copies. For example, you can find a real cheap copy of this in 4th edition. But regardless, it looks like it's happened anyway, and we're seeing a temporary spike here. I would expect this to snap back pretty quickly, though, as whoever's doing these buyouts, because it looks like they're buying out a number of cards. We're going to talk about a few more as we go forward. Looks like they will probably try to sell them back to the market as quickly as possible. And that's usually how these things kind of unfold. They will buy up cards on credit before they have to pay the interest. They'll try to offload them. Number 2, Mistress Factory. This is the summer variant from Antiquities, of $41.28 to $89.95. So we saw the winter variant get hot, then we saw the fall variant get hot. Well, it makes sense. Why not the summer variant? So look out, spring variant. You're next probably, but it looks like someone's just going down the checklist, probably buying these things out. Number 1 is Guardian Beast from Arabian Nights, up $42.78 to $304.42. This card has been pretty hot recently. It's a great card. It's good in 93-94 format. And also, it's just a classic reserve list Arabian Nights card. It was actually good in its day, too. All right, let's move on to some notable cards. I mentioned earlier that Pauper has been very hot. We have a number of Pauper spikes to talk about. We also have some speculation about Modern that we'll get into, as well as some more of these weird legacy spikes. We'll begin with your Pauper update. Flaring Pain is the first of many cards here, up 93 cents to $1.40. You'll find this in Burn, but a number of other decks too. Next is Curian Ranger, up $1.30 to $4.36. This was on our list a few weeks ago. It spiked again now, actually starting to put up a pretty nice price point at getting closer to the $5 mark. You'll find this in Elf decks as well as Stompy decks. Preordained. 3 versions here are hot this week. Plane Chase Anthology up 49 cents to $3.32. Commander 2015 up 92 cents to $5.35. Dual Deck Venzer vs. Koth up $1.32 to $3.99. I really like the art on that one too, by the way. So Preordain is an amazing card. It's in a number of different decks in Pauper, not to mention sometimes Legacy and Vintage too, but in Pauper you'll find this most notably right now in the Mono Blue Delver deck, but again, other decks will run this as well. Cursive Chains, another card that's going up mostly due to Mono Blue Delver, up $1.82 to $2.35 this week, and it's a Shadowmoor card. These tend to be a little spiky because they did have a lower print run than other modern era Magic cards due to a recession in the game at that time. Needle Drop, and this is up $2.11 this week to $3. Huge percentage spike. You'll find this in Burn decks. Also, it's a Lorwyn card, another set that had a little bit of a lower print run compared to its other modern sets around it. Cryptrats is our next one, up $2.84 to $3.49. Another nice percentage spike here. This is the Visions version. This was reprinted in 7th edition. You can find those for under $1 if you just want to play with the card, but this particular version, of course, looks a little bit cooler, I think. You'll find this in the mono black control decks. Chainer's Edict, another card you'll find in mono black control as well as many other control decks in the format. And this time, the Friday Night Magic promo version is up 551 to 1441. I usually hesitate about talking about some of these promos, especially rare foils and such, but there's enough data points for these Friday Night Magic ones that I felt comfortable with it. I felt like it was good data. Secondly, the Torment version is up 635 to 1296. Now, I do want to point something out. Notice this is an uncommon, of course, in Torment. This card was never printed in paper as a common, but it is still legal in Pauper because Pauper follows the Magic Online rules typically. All the big tournaments have been going by the Magic Online rules, and this has been printed as a common on Magic Online, so it has been acceptable. But always check ahead of time if you're going to play like Pauper in an LGS or something, make sure they are using those same rules. Oubliette, one of my favorites, up 752 to 4750. This is from Arabian Nights. It's a common. It's obviously not on the reserve list, but it is a very, very hot Pauper card. Great again in mono black control. This card has been trending down over the last few weeks after it had a nice little spike maybe a month or so ago, but it comes back in a big way this week. All right, are you ready for some speculation? Let's speculate. We got a couple of cards to talk about here. Bloodbraid Elf is the first one. Now, if you haven't heard yet, on Monday, there's going to be an update to the official ban and restricted list from Wizards of the Coast. A number of weeks ago, they hinted that they might be open to unbanning a card from Modern in this next update. On Monday, we'll know, but there is some speculation over what that card might be. And Bloodbraid Elf is one of those options. So as you can see here, 3 versions are going up pretty significantly this week. Plane Chase Anthology is up 552 to 1299. Plane Chase 2012 edition up 916 to 1358. And the Friday Night Magic promo version of 1251 to 4270. So all 3 of these share 2 things. One, they're a little bit harder to find. They had lower print runs than some of the other versions of this card. And secondly, they all share the same art, which maybe that has something to do with it. Perhaps some players are gravitating towards this particular piece of art. Now, the other versions of Bloodbraid are either staying stable or going up a little bit this week as well. So that is worth noting. So we will know on Monday, and if this does become unbanned, you can expect more spikes from probably all the versions of this card, including these 3. Chase the Mind Sculptor. Okay, we're going deep now. Put on your tinfoil hats. First off, World Wake up 1448 to 85.84. The specialty foiled from the Vault 20 that everybody loves of $16.60 to $83. And Eternal Masters up $20 and a cent to $84.99. So what's the story behind this? Well, last weekend at the Pro Tour, they announced that Chase the Mind Sculptor will be a mythic in the upcoming Masters 25 set. So, a little bit of conspiracy theory here that perhaps they are putting that in the set because this is the card that will be unbanned on Monday for Modern. Now, a couple things. I don't really think that's the case because I do think Jace is a pretty big force to unban into Modern, especially considering the format is actually pretty diverse right now. So it would be a tad bit dangerous and they could do more harm than good, which would look really bad if they did that. Secondly, I don't really think the people that kind of follow the ban and restricted list are the same people figuring out what cards are going to be in the sets. I don't really think those groups talk that much to each other, is my theory anyway. In a large corporation, that's typically what happens. So I kind of doubt there's a really correlation there. But some people are thinking that could be the case. We will know on Monday and keep an eye on it. If it did get unbanned, this card would go insane. All right, let's go into some other legacy spikes. Wall of Opposition. This was another case of a Legends non-reserve list card that has been reprinted. You can find this in Chronicles. That spiked pretty aggressively this week, up 2049 to 2245. Definitely another target of a buyout. There were some others too that were going up, at least in smaller quantities, that I didn't mention in today's video. So if you're interested, check those out definitely. But it looks like there's a pretty big buyout going on. Ring of Maroof from Arabian Nights, up 2146 this week to $90. I just want to point this out to you because it is a reserve list card. It's actually a pretty awesome card. Even back in the day, it was a card that captured a lot of people's imaginations. And I do think it's still very affordable. So if for some reason you've been putting off getting this, you might want to think about picking it up sooner than later because I feel like this is overdue for a big spike. And the last card we'll talk about today is one more of these Legends cards. Is Teleport of 3181 to 34.99. Another card that is not on the reserve list. It was in Chronicles. You can get a real cheap copy there if you want one. But again, it's definitely part of that buyout. Alright, with that being said, wow, that's the Market Watch for this week. So much going on. We'll be back next week with a lot more, I'm sure. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.